American Freedom Radio Network proudly presents, live from Phoenix, Arizona, The Truth Denied Talk Radio with host Roxy Lopez. Join us here every Friday from 7 to 9 Central for topics you won't hear on mainstream news, such as chemtrails, GMOs, Morgellons disease, and much more. Humanity is 7 billion strong. We are the majority. If you would like to speak to the host, the call-in number is 218-339-8525. And now, live from the Valley of the Sun, your host, Roxy Lopez.
And welcome. It looks like we might have to change that introduction, huh? Now that we are on Mondays. Today is our first Monday show. And I'm really glad we have someone who's returning to the show. She's been on the show a couple of times, majorly respected in the environmental activism field. Her name, of course, is Rosalind Peterson. And during the week when the advertisements were up last week, we did see quite a few people who are just very interested and who also have questions for Rosalind as well. Before I bring Rosalind Peterson on to the show, live, of course, here in Phoenix, Arizona, I do have an announcement. I just received this, and I thought that because I'm getting so much email, our organization's getting so many emails regarding animals, I wanted to let you know, and we will have an article on this probably by the end of the night to direct you to other websites to help you out. But I did receive a Pet 360 safety meter that I am subscribed to, and they just sent out a voluntary recall on pet food. So in case you're not signed up with something like that, we'll do an article so that we can help you along. Anyway, some of the food that's been recalled for both dogs and cats and hamsters and rats are 4 Health, Apex, Canaday, Chicken Soup for Pet Lovers Soul, Country Value, Diamond Naturals, Kirkland Signature, of course you know that's the Costco brand, Natural Balance, which is supposed to be a really good brand, Premium Edge, Professional, Purina Vet Feline, Solid Gold, and the list goes on and on. Wellness, which is another great brand. So if any of you are having any issues with your pets right now, it's salmonella poisoning that they're going through. That's why all of these foods were recalled. And we will write up the article about that later on tonight. And I must say that we'll provide you some information of what the signs are. And mainly the venison has been recalled. And most of you know that my cat was diagnosed with IBD 5 months ago. And the only diet they will allow my cat to have is venison. So I think this is really interesting. So after the show, I'm going to have to make an emergency call to our specialists and find out why my kitty hasn't been wanting to eat his venison for the last few days. I do prescribe to that brand, Natural Balance. So I'll let you know further what happens. Now, with that in mind, please, I don't know anything more about this, so I will write up the article after the show. We will open up the caller lines in the second hour. We have Rosalind Peterson all to ourselves for 2 whole hours. This is going to be a fantastic show. She has new information to bring to the table. At the top of the second hour, you may call in 218-339-8525. We're glad to take your calls. Rosalind is the California president and co-founder of the Agricultural Defense Coalition. It's also known as the ADC, which was formed in 2006 to protect agriculture from a wide variety of experimental weather and atmospheric testing programs. So her website, by the way, if you want to follow along, is agriculturedefensecoalition.org. And as I have said before on the show, this is an extensive website, very organized. If you want to see the categories on the front page or the home page, whatever you want to call it, just click categories right under those photos at the top, and you will see the plethora of categories for your interests. This newest or latest paper that Rosalind has written up, I'll give you a little piece of it, the U.S. Navy's 5-year warfare testing program and the increasing and ongoing threat to the Gulf of Mexico, Atlantic, and Pacific Oceans. And she's got a call to action to help save our marine mammals and their ocean habitat. So I'm going to let Rosalind explain this call to action, give us some background on it, and let us know what is happening with this particular call to action that she has going at her organization. And it's good to have you back. Welcome to the show, Rosalind.
Well, thank you. It's an honor and a privilege to be here with you today.
Well, thanks. Likewise. And I'm concerned. Sorry, I had to, make that announcement and keep you holding there. No disrespect, but I just got it in right before the show, and I just had to make that announcement for pet lovers so they can get started on doing some research on pet food recall. I find it really interesting how many foods are infected with salmonella. It's making me crazy. But anyway, a lot of things make me crazy, and you know that, right, Rosalind?
Well, there's a lot of areas of concern, that's for sure.
I know, exactly. So thank you for sending the information about this program. I know that we touched on this the last time you were on the show. I think that was a couple of months ago. In your report, you say the Washington Post Associated Press, May 11th, 2012, which was only a couple of days ago, revealed that new Navy study says use of sonar explosives may hurt more marine mammals than once thought. And, of course, Honolulu, my hometown, also the U.S. Navy may hurt more dolphins and whales by using sonar explosives in Hawaii and California under a more thorough analysis that reflects new research and covers naval activities in a wider area than previously studied. Can you just tell us when this came to your attention? And we will definitely get into your call to action on this very important issue. It sounds like from the first paragraph of this that what's being quoted here that I just read, it sounds like that these studies are, at the very least, the activities are in wider spread regions than you thought, for one, and harming more marine mammals than once thought. Is that a correct statement?
That is a correct statement. For your audience, if you want to follow along, and you can go online, there's on the agriculturedefensecoalition.org, right under the photographs of the cows, there's the U.S. Navy section, or you can go onto the category section and find several sections which are going to be updated in a couple of days with every piece of information I know about these U.S. Navy warfare testing programs. Now, the map on my website, there's a United States map. It's a Navy map. And it shows the entire United States coastal boundary. On this boundary, since 2008, a whole series of ranges are drawn in. And of all these ranges that are located from the entire coastal region all the way on the west coast of the United States, that means Washington, Oregon, and California, all the way down past Southern California, there's a series of warfare testing ranges that are in complete operation, testing sonar, bomb blast, missile exercises, new weapon systems, drone surveillance, and weapon testing. And what is shocking is that they are also conducting these programs and experiments in the Gulf of Mexico and along the entire Atlantic seaboard from Maine all the way to Florida, and then Florida all the way to Texas. Included are also islands in the Pacific Ocean, for example, the Hawaiian Islands, the Marianas Islands, near Guam, all these ranges, including now new ones in the Gulf of Alaska, are either in operation. There's 12 in operation right now, and there are more planned, huge ranges, going to be planned for the Pacific and the Atlantic, and the public comment started on May 11th and will continue through July 10th, 2012. And people can make public comments. They can write to their elected officials. There's lots to do. But here's what's going on. According to Senator Dianne Feinstein and 7 other senators, the Navy plans to increase the number of its exercises or expand the areas in which they may occur, and virtually every coastal state will be affected. Some exercises may occur in the nation's most biologically sensitive marine habitats, including national marine sanctuaries and breeding habitats. In all, the Navy anticipates more than 2.3 million takes, significant disruptions in marine mammal foraging, breeding, and other essential behaviors per year, or 11.7 million takes over the course of a 5-year permit. This letter was written on June 19, 2009. Since that time, more military warfare testing ranges have been approved, and the takes, which is defined as, under the Marine Mammal Protection Act, harass, hunt, capture, kill, or collect, or attempt to harass, hunt, capture, kill, or collect. And it's defined under the Endangered Species Act as to harass, harm, pursue, hunt, shoot, wound, kill, trap, capture, or collect, or attempt to engage in any such conduct. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration has been approving the taking of marine mammals like someone would take pancakes off a grill. They've been rubber stamping them. In most cases, the mitigation measures to protect marine mammals are effective only 9% of the time, according to their own studies. And also, the 9% of the time for their mitigation measures means that they are being protected with a 17th century method of putting somebody on the mast of a ship, essentially, and using binoculars to see if they can see any marine mammals. If they do, we are to believe that they will stop multi-million-dollar exercises, missile exercises, sonar use, bomb blasts, until the marine mammals are gone. There's only one problem. The seas in the Pacific, for example, are usually gray. Under cloudy skies, there can be fog, there can be white caps, and the odds of someone standing in a mast of a ship and seeing a marine mammal is almost impossible, like a sea turtle. So their techniques are straight out of the 17th century, when sailing ships used to look out at sea and look for other ships nearby, or in war they used to look for enemy ships. So this technique is the technique that the Navy, with all of its technological know-how, is using to protect marine mammals.
That just floors me. It really does. How aggravating. And why would they even, in my opinion, why would they even make such a statement? Because it just sounds ridiculous. It sounds like you said, 17th century, especially. That's why we have radar today. And as you know, I think you know this, my husband's a deep sea fisherman, captain, and radar is what they use for just about anything, and I don't understand why they would even make a statement as so ridiculous as this.
Well, that's what my congressman, U.S. Congressman Thompson, thinks as well, that the Navy's mitigation measures, one, are effective only 9% of the time, but two, I believe that because Navy and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration are promoting this technique of sightings from the mast of a ship, essentially. Mm-hmm. that they don't really want to find any marine mammals. So they don't want to see them. In other words, they're setting up, because you wouldn't see marine mammals at night.
No.
They do exercises at night. You're not going to see marine mammals most of the time. If you have any type of fog or weather events or rain or whatever else is happening, and you're not going to see the smallest of the marine mammals anyway, because whitecaps, fog, gray weather can all obscure visual sightings from the mast of a ship.
Well, and in light of what you said about the 9% of the time, I think that's a high percentage myself. It's
I do too.
Right? It's a needle in a haystack.
Yes. So, when you look at the maps, the scope of the warfare testing is so tremendous that I find myself even stunned by the level of testing and the amount, because most of these warfare ranges have redundant testing, redundant new weapon systems testing. In other words, the 2,000-pound bombs are the same in the Atlantic and the Gulf of Mexico and in the Pacific, Hellfire missiles, and there's hundreds each year that will be shot off in just one range, much less all the ranges total. So you're talking about the Navy going to war on our oceans and our marine mammals without any thought of protecting them, without any thought of preserving. National marine sanctuaries, for example, are not protected in most ranges. The one in Northern California, Oregon, and Washington, the national marine sanctuaries, the marine reserves, for just one example, the biologically sensitive areas, breeding habitats, feeding habitats are all being bombed, sonarized. Toxic chemicals are being dumped in the ocean, debris, unexploded ordnance. I can't tell you how much is going into these oceans in all of their exercises with nothing being protected. The U.S. Navy...
Rosalind, hold that thought. We're going to go into a commercial break, and we'll be right back, and let's continue that thought for sure. You're listening to The Truth Tonight. We've got Rosalind Peterson on. Thanks for joining us.
Welcome to the world's meeting place. American.
It's practically narcotic.
Freedom.
Oh, yes. I like very much.
Radio.
You're an American institution.
American Freedom Radio.
Welcome back, Rosalind. So you were just talking about and sharing with us how far and wide this is and what they are doing.
Well, the Navy in most cases is refusing to protect national marine sanctuaries, marine reserves, biologically sensitive habitats, breeding and feeding habitats, and also for migrating whales and fish and other marine mammals to refuse to stop their warfare testing or sonar use during those migration periods. So the whales, in essence, and everything that migrates will be harassed or killed or injured in every single solitary range that they now live in. Once all of these new ranges are implemented, there will be no place for them to escape from military testing and warfare range blasts and sonar, this type of thing. There will be no place. The other part of this is that the Navy is going to destroy the national marine sanctuaries, breeding habitats, feeding habitats, so they're stationary places in the oceans where marine mammals feed. Those that are stationary and those that migrate are also going to be destroyed. In the name of war, and this rankles me a lot, we are engaged, the U.S. Navy, and in some cases the U.S. Air Force with their exercises, especially when they're using bomb blasts over ocean areas, are in the process, in the name of war, of destroying natural resources in all these oceans. That there is no other way to look at this except that instead of the Navy protecting our natural resources and protecting the marine life and protecting all of these wonderful areas and places where people can go and swim and food supplies and all of this, the United States government is bent on destroying the majority of those areas. And by the time that they get done with putting into place these 2 new warfare ranges, if we don't protest, the Navy has stated that they can practice inside or outside the ranges. So it means that once they have approval for these 2 new ones, the one for the Atlantic and the Gulf of Mexico, and the new ones for the Pacific, that means that they can practice anywhere they want, anytime. And that any hope of survival for marine life, fish, other wildlife, is going to be slim and none. And the Navy cannot restore this. Once destroyed, the coral reefs, all these other areas will be gone forever. And what type of legacy, what are we doing? In the name of war, we are going to destroy our oceans? It's an incredulous state of affairs, but there is something we can do about it. But I still think that this is just incredulous. And when I first learned about this, back in February 2009, I was absolutely shocked. And we fended off the Navy in the Northwest Training Range complex where I live in Northern California, then Oregon, Washington, and Idaho. We fended them off with the help of our U.S. congressmen and a few senators from implementing it for 2 years. However, the Navy keeps coming back. They are going to practice where and when they want. And my congressman has been absolutely stunned that they won't preserve any areas or say that they don't have to practice in any areas. They have to practice everywhere. And that to me is absolutely stunning.
It truly is. And when you talk about habitat and, especially like the Hawaiian Islands, I can vouch for some of the stuff that's going on in the Hawaiian Islands and the marine life habitat. I mean, that has been preserved for a reason and cared for a very long time. And then, of course, when we're talking about the Pacific Ocean and all the absolutely fabulous, species of fish. We're not just talking about dolphins and whales that seem to be beaching themselves, or maybe they got killed when they were out there and just rolled up on the beach. I don't know if they're committing suicide or not, but it doesn't matter. Their habitat is being bombarded with. They're being killed, and what I'm thinking as you're relaying this to me, first I'm thinking to myself that, and I'm sure my audience is thinking the same thing. Like anything else, Rosalind, and it might sound like a stupid question, but I don't believe there are stupid questions. Ask them. How does the military get this kind of power? And how are they passing laws to be able to do these bombings, etc., and these dumping zones, etc.? Are they passing laws in this country to make it legal, or is the military sort of a rogue military that does whatever it wants?
In answer to your question, somewhere between 2004 and 2005 under the Bush administration, the U.S. Navy was told to become a force of the next century. Essentially, the Bush administration gave them carte blanche to do whatever they want, upgrade. They gave them the money. It was in the military budget. Our taxpayer dollars are paying for this. And this range system and all of these things were developed over the course of the years until they were starting to be implemented as far as environmental impact statements and public notices, very few of them, starting in 2007. And the process went through, for many of them, through 2008. And by the end of 2008, going into 2009, these various ranges started to become full-scale warfare testing ranges for new weapon systems, drone surveillance, you name it. We have ranges that are conducting all kinds of different things. The Boardman Range in Oregon, for example, is now conducting drone surveillance, using drone for warfare and new weapons systems testing over land areas and over ocean areas in conjunction with some of the other ocean ranges. And in addition, they're going to talk about nuclear-powered drones now, and they could be carrying bombs. What happens if there's an accident? The surveillance. Private corporations are now using hired contractors, and private corporations can now conduct drone surveillance over the United States and use the Boardman Range and other areas to conduct their surveillance and perfect their techniques. Well, they're going to be spying on us, of course. That's the whole idea here. So it's not just one area or one branch of the military. They're all engaged. The U.S. Army is building underwater facilities and land facilities. All of the military branches are working, and each year the budget is approved for this. And since the budgets are being approved, our U.S. senators and our U.S. congressmen know fully well that this is happening and have not objected. And that's where my objection comes in, because they're not holding U.S. congressional hearings. They're not putting out national notices to their constituents for the most part. People find out by accident or don't even know that right offshore where they live, or that the source of the food that they eat may someday not be there because of U.S. Navy warfare testing.
Right. You said something, thank you for answering that, makes sense, but then at the same time I can't even wrap my mind around it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That the way we've been set up in this government is to so these things won't happen. And I'm blown away. I've got a couple of questions. So the commander-in-chief at the time being Bush, or the Bush administration, gave in 2004, 2005 roughly, gave the U.S. Navy basically full reign to do this testing and set up shop and funded it with our tax dollars. Why wouldn't I'm just trying to be logical here, and I know my listeners are thinking the same thing. I know them. Why didn't anybody stop the commander-in-chief? Why didn't anybody say, no, you can't do that?
Because 9/11, the bombing of the World Trade Center, the 9/11 mantra of we have to protect ourselves at all costs. We have to upgrade. We have to spend all kinds of military funding to protect ourselves. And during that time, no one would dare speak up and oppose these operations because they would look unpatriotic. In any election cycle, the Democrats who might stand up would be called unpatriotic. And I don't think that some of the people that were involved in the little they knew clearly had a map of all the ranges and a map of everything intended in all the areas that they were going to be testing. I think that they may have believed that testing would only be in a few places. I don't think that they really believed or could even imagine the scope of what would be set up by the Navy and the Air Force.
Well, that makes sense, and they probably didn't see any longevity either, because when you hear testing, we tend to think short period of time, do a few tests and then it's done, and it sounds like the operation is just full bore, huge. It sounds like it's never going to end. The testing's never going to end. And in the paper that you wrote up, the U.S. Navy is using toxic chemicals, sonar, missile exercises, bomb blasts, and other types of new weapon testing, which threaten the Gulf of Mexico, as you already iterated, and many areas in the Atlantic Ocean. U.S. Navy and Air Force bomb blasts could trigger earthquakes or create underwater fissures, causing more oil leaks in the Gulf of Mexico. Fragile, capped oil wells in the Gulf could be damaged and start leaking as bomb blasts rock the Gulf during the next 5 years of warfare testing. This sounds like insanity, being that we just had, 2 years ago, less than 2 years ago, the full-blown catastrophic BP damage that is irreversible done to the Gulf. And then now we're going to go in there and do what? Kill the rest of what's there? It just doesn't add up. At this point, you also mentioned something else, and I'm just curious. Correct me if I'm wrong. You said something about the U.S. Army building underwater facilities. Did you say underwater facilities?
Oh yes, they're building underwater facilities to blow up, or they're building underwater sonar arrays. They're spending more time on shoreline building of different things to supplement their own Army exercises, but they're also doing things to supplement the Navy and Marines and the Air Force, and some of these ranges and some of the things they're doing are underwater.
Underwater, that's crazy. In their testing that they're doing, their experimental warfare programs, are they, to your knowledge, being the Army, Navy, and Air Force, the participants, are they documenting what they're destroying as they go along? I mean, are they documenting all the fish kills and the marine life damage? Are they documenting any of this, our military?
Well, they say they are, just from visual sightings. But something you can take and have sonar impacts, and you may never see the marine mammals, because by the time that the Navy moves away or through or stops the exercises, the marine mammals could be some distance away. They wouldn't be spotted. So there's no real way to determine all the impacts that will be happening, although they're finding, they're beginning to find, and the Navy has admitted that sonar does harm marine mammals, and they've even listed in one of their reports that they have harmed marine mammals, and that sonar and bomb blasts do more than they think that they thought. Years ago they said, oh, well, not too much harm, not too much would be going on, and now they've had to admit, because they're seeing that their exercises are causing harm. Mm-hmm. So that's why this report came out last Friday on May 11th to talk about that they've had to admit that there was more harm. Well, once you admit that there's more harm, why aren't you fully engaged in protecting those marine mammals in those areas and to stop some of this? I mean, they don't have to have live fire bomb blasts going on. They don't have to sonarize the entire ocean area that they're operating in. It's just not necessary. So that's where we're at this point.
Okay, I have a question about the U.S. Navy warfare chemical menu. When we come back from this short break, joining us today is our guest, Rosalind Peterson, and we'll be right back. We're speaking with Rosalind Peterson. And Rosalind, I'm looking through this, and it just it rings a lot of bells. And so that others know what I'm talking about. It says the Navy warfare chemical menu will contaminate air, water, the ocean, and soil. Their list of toxic chemicals is a long one, as noted in various Navy EIS documents. Depleted uranium, red and white phosphorus, cadmium, lead, titanium oxide, atmospheric releases of aluminum oxide from the U.S. Navy atmospheric experiments over the East Coast, known as CARE, C-A-R-E, chaff releases, aluminum-coated fiberglass particulates. I mean, this is all the sort of evidence that's coming up when we start talking about the CARE experiments with with NASA, and this aluminum and the chaff. Now we're starting to talk about do these programs all meet somewhere in the middle? In other words, with geoengineering, chemtrails, and these programs right here that we're talking about today.
The one that meets in the middle is that right now the geoengineers like David Keith and others who are talking about solar radiation management, they're talking about putting particles and chemicals into the atmosphere to reduce the amount of direct sunlight reaching the Earth. One of their proposals is to use aluminum oxide to create releases of aluminum oxide particulates above the ground to reflect more direct sunlight away from the Earth. The problem is that the U.S. Navy is already engaged with several programs where they release aluminum oxide dust clouds. They use the U.S. Navy uses a NASA Brant rocket and has put up these aluminum oxide dust clouds. And so, therefore, once you put them up, we know that those particles will come back down to Earth, polluting air, water, and soil. And particles don't stay up there indefinitely in the atmosphere. They come back down, and they change soil pH. They impact human and animal health. They pollute rivers and streams. They can have a negative effect on tree health, because once aluminum gets into the tree roots, it can reduce the amount of water and nutrients that a tree needs to absorb to grow healthy and strong. And in so doing, the tree eventually just strangles to death, looking like it's dying from lack of water, which it is, but not from lack of rain. It's lack of nutrients and water because the roots no longer absorb enough to keep the tree strong and healthy. So this is a byproduct, and the geoengineering aspect of it is that we already have the Navy and the Air Force putting up trimethyl aluminum into the atmosphere. They just did an experiment last month, and there's more experiments have been done in past years and more planned. And now we have these so-called geoengineering group that wants to add even more of these particles and chemicals into the atmosphere. So you have a pea soup mix, which is going to get worse and worse for human health.
Oh, sure. And for those listening who don't realize, isn't it in the millions of tons that they're launching? The millions of tons of aluminum oxide? Or? Yes,
the geoengineering group with David Keith at the lead has talked about releasing so many megatons a year. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the Navy already releases, and other branches of the military already release several tons of aluminum-coated fiberglass into the atmosphere every year, called chaff. So our exposure is going to become more and more.
This is alarming to me. It's, I know that, you've spent your life as an activist, and your parents were activists, environmentally directed, and I'm seeing a complete difference in 50 years ago and to now. I mean, there were the issues 50 years ago that people could fight and stand up and shout, that famous line, "I'm not going to take it anymore," and get the job done and get these programs out of the way, the ones that they had in the 50s, let's say, or the 60s. Today, I think the public finds, I would say most of the public isn't even educated, which is why I do what I do and why you do what you do. It's that simple, because the public is unaware. This isn't the kind of stuff that's showing up on the front page of a newspaper anymore or on the news. So I think the public is fairly I don't think they're turning a blind eye to it. I don't think they know it's even existing. It is even happening. So that's A. And B, and I think you and I have talked about this before, what is the method in which we, the people, one would be creating awareness, obviously, but what do we do with the awareness once we have that sick feeling in our gut and we know it's true and it's real? What would the public's next step be in handling these, just today's show, and just what we're talking about today with the U.S. Navy, the CARE programs, the geoengineering? I mean, that says a lot right there. We all know that right there, just that can of worms to open up is huge. What do we do about it? What does the public do about it? The old days, the public could raise hell.
They can't raise hell now because most of the people don't even know it's happening. Mm-hmm. They have no idea of the scope and the enormity of what is going on. And the major news media does not cover it. In other words, they're in collusion to not cover the story for the most part. They know because they have been sent letters, they have been sent packets, all kinds of things showing that this is going on, and have adamantly refused to take up the subject, whether they're afraid that they'll be accused of being unpatriotic for taking up the issue, or whether there's some reason but they don't want to cover the story. And very few. USA Today did one article. KTVU, Oakland, San Francisco television station here, did 2 stories on the subject. But other than very small, in other words, TV stations, just a couple, or very small, very little newspaper coverage, there's so little of it, and no one is talking about the depth and breadth of this problem, that most people don't even know what's happening off their shores. They don't even know what's going on over their heads with these chemical releases that the Army and the Navy and the Air Force and all the others are doing. So when they don't know, there becomes a lack of anyone taking any action. But the environmental groups here, let's talk about them for a minute, they do know. The Natural Resource Defense Council knows. Greenpeace knows. A lot of different groups know. Sierra Club knows, for example. A lot of different environmental groups know, but they're not going and getting together and doing national press releases, conferences, and getting on C-SPAN and doing all these other things to have a national dialogue about this in order to have public awareness. They do very little as far as talking about the subject. And the National Resource Defense Council says to all of us, well, we want a seat at the table in Washington, D.C. If we object, then we won't have a seat at the table to negotiate away, in other words, how many marine mammals can be killed or something. So I'm not interested in negotiating at this moment because the Navy is full speed ahead on this.
Right. And, the idea that the mainstream or corporate media receives the information and the packets and the proof and chooses not to air it for fear of perhaps being unpatriotic. If allowing these programs and allowing this killing and murders, and that's what I call it, to go on, and this war on our marine fish, birds, endangered species, and human health, if that's considered unpatriotic, then I guess I'm unpatriotic.
Well,
seriously.
I had one Congressman staffer tell me and others that we were unpatriotic for daring to even raise the issue. And I looked at that and I thought, well, no. The Navy has our government and our taxpayer dollars should not be used for destroying our oceans.
Correct, and that's exactly what I'm saying. And where are they getting this language that it would be unpatriotic to not want to have warfare going on in our oceans? What makes that in other words, is their view? And I'm really trying to wrap my mind around this. Is their view that if we don't get behind warfare experiments, behind the Patriot Act, behind our military, because really all they're trying to do is, quote unquote, protect us, you and me, even though they sounds like they're affecting us? Let's answer that question when we get back. We'll be right back with Rosalind Peterson. Boy, this unpatriotic thing really blowing my mind. We'll be right back. It's The Truth Denied. I'm Roxy Lopez. Our guest today is Rosalind Peterson with the Agricultural Defense Coalition. And, of course, I promised that I would open up the phone lines at the top of the hour for questions. So feel free to call in if you wish. The number is 218-339-8525. We also have quite a few questions for you, Rosalind, from the listening audience, and we'll get to that in a minute because, as we were just talking about before the break, the whole idea of patriotism, that if we buck up against, we the people buck up against this, I think we the people are the most free of everyone to buck up against this. If corporations are in the game and the military's in the game and the government's in the game, and if they're all in the game and the media, the corporate media is in the game and do not want to come forward because of this idea that they may become labeled as, unpatriotic, well, then we, the people, have nothing to lose.
Well, I don't consider myself unpatriotic for wanting to save 11.7 million marine mammals and their ocean habitats. I just don't feel unpatriotic about that. I think the Navy can do better. I think the Navy could give up some of its live fire testing. They don't need to live fire Hellfire missiles, for example. They've been using them since before the first Gulf War. If they don't know how Hellfire missiles work by now, they never will.
Well,
so
that's a great point.
That's what's going on here.
That's a great point. And just on that note, so why furthering the experiments? Why building this? I mean, really, what's the big picture here? Do they just don't know how to stop? I mean, are we? What's the big picture?
Well, the big picture, we're funding the industries that are building the bombs and the missiles and all of this. Mm-hmm. So there's that source of funding, and all the corporations that get money because they get government contracts to build weapons of war and mass destruction, essentially. But on the other hand, they could build things that wouldn't blast the oceans to practice and train, and that would seem a realistic method. And they don't have to use sonar everywhere in every square inch of our oceans. They just don't need to do this because the impacts on marine mammals would be just tremendous. So there has to be a way that they can be war ready, but on the other hand, there has to be another way to conduct exercises and training that don't destroy our natural resources and our oceans. And I don't think that that's unpatriotic to ask our Navy and Air Force and all the military branches to do that.
Unless they just have a different idea of what patriotic means.
Well, senators and congressmen don't want to be labeled unpatriotic for saying that we should preserve some marine mammals because the Navy has to train, see? Then they would be attacked. But we have to stand up and say, well, no, you aren't going to be attacked. We'll support you if you begin to take measures and hold hearings on these issues that will protect our natural resources.
And do you feel, as far as government goes, Rosalind, do you feel that constituents play a big role? In other words, if we did gather in droves and hit them up, senators and congressmen and women, do you think that would give them a sense of support and perhaps they would go up against this wall?
Well, it worked for our U.S. congressman because he was up for re-election, and his constituents got rebellious and said, we want you to defend our interests. We want you to defend, he has a coastal region as part of his region, and we said, look, you've got the fishing industry, the tourism industry, and you've got constituents up and down your coast who aren't going to vote for you come the next election unless you, stand up. Mm-hmm. And so in the beginning, he may not have wanted to stand up, but you see, we would support him and vote for him if he fought for us. And that's what this new election cycle, I mean, there's votes in June and there's people voting in different areas, and it's at the local level. We got our County Board of Supervisors to oppose the Navy actions in our county, which is a coastal county in Mendocino. We got the Humboldt County Board of Supervisors with us and the Marin County Board of Supervisors with us. And so what happened was we were able to go to the local grassroots and educate them about what was going on and said, look, if you're not going to stand up for us, we're not going to vote for you. I mean, this becomes an area where we have to stand up. And, the television right now, they're talking about all this advertising that's going on. They're talking about the candidates running for different offices. Well, when these candidates come hat in hand down to the local communities and want us to vote for them, we have to raise these issues and say, look, we'll support you, but we want to preserve our marine mammals. So if you don't act to do this for us, then we may not be voting for you. We're going to vote for someone who will stand up. And you see, that scares them to death because you're not asking them questions about the media questions about whatever subject is going on. I mean, the media is into religion and gay marriage and what all these issues, abortion and all these other issues, which may never be resolved to anybody's satisfaction because there's always going to be a divergence of opinions. But when we start to ask questions the media aren't asking and start to let our elected officials and those running know that this is our position, and if you don't, in other words, won't stand for us, we're not going to vote for you. And we're going to say that and not work for you. And so, because our votes aren't for sale. So, it's up to us, the people, to say who we want and who's going to stand up for us and find out and who isn't on any issue.
You're making a good point. And so let me just play devil's advocate here for a minute.
Yes.
What about the millions now of Americans who are so fed up with the government? Their heads are spinning. They don't, the citizens, that their heads are spinning. They can't even keep up with these laws that are being passed. They don't know, 80% of the laws that are being passed against us, like the NDAA. I don't like that one. But I'm saying, right. And so what about people who have actually just thrown in the towel, said, forget it. I'm not voting. I don't want to have anything to do with government. I'm sick of it. Sort of like what we were listening to on the breaks with George Carlin. They own us, they bought us, and they sold us. What do we do to get Americans back in the game of we do have power? We gave our power away. We lost our power where our power was stolen from us. Doesn't matter what, we lost it. How do we get it back? And how do we educate the people around us to inspire them that here we are in an election year? We've got a campaign year, that we actually have an opportunity in this huge jungle of crises, one after the other. How do we inspire one another? Give me something. I need something, because I deal with people all day long who go vote, go into the, sorry. I don't trust the government. I don't trust this. I don't trust that. I'm done with the government. I'm sick of it. I'm 50 years old and I'm done. I get that so much. I get that feedback. So what do we do to re-inspire, get them off the drama page and into the action page? What do we do? What do we do to help you with this call to action?
I think what happens here, in my opinion, of course, but I think people become overwhelmed because there's so many different topics and subjects that we're being hit with all the time. And the mantra is that government doesn't work and we should drown it in a bathtub. But what people forget is that there are laws there put in place to help us. The Environmental Protection Agency, the Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act. There's all kinds of things, government agencies and things at state and federal levels,
and
that
we
were
need
put
to
into
hold
place to help us.
Sorry, I just had to interrupt you. Sorry, Rosalind. But we're not holding these agencies accountable.
That's true. But what happens here is that who we elect has to hold them accountable. And when we look at the local levels, we have to take back things at the local level. In other words, I don't think we're going to start at the top and move down. I think that we're going to have to start at the local level, and we're going to have to start working up. And people power for what's in your best interest. If you don't vote and you say, well, I'm not going to be concerned, people are going to lose their Social Security, they're going to lose their Medicare, they're going to lose benefits, they're going to lose a whole lot of things that maybe they might depend on it someday and wonder what happened. And if they take themselves out of the game, then there's no hope that they're going to have benefits. There's no hope that they're going to have a better life. So somehow you have to be inspired, if not for you, for your children or your grandchildren. I'd like my grandchildren to be able to swim in the ocean and to see marine mammals, real ones, that move across all of our oceans, or swim in the oceans and see the coral and all the beauty that the world has. And if I don't stand up, that beauty isn't going to be available to me or to future generations. And so if I give up and I say, okay, you can do whatever you want to me, and I'll just put my hands up, and you can do whatever you want to me, the voting is going to go on. The laws are going to be passed, and when they hit those restrictions hit you, it may be too late to do anything about them. So find an issue. It can be any issue you want, but find an issue and become engaged, because, one, you'll feel better because you're taking an action, and two, isn't there anything precious to you that you would like to preserve for your family, your children, for someone? I mean, those that decide that they're going to rubber stamp whatever's being done because they don't like it, but they're going to rubber stamp it, they're acquiescing. They're actually voting for whatever it is that they don't like. So I'm not quite sure that we have to go down that path, but some people are, and there's nothing we're going to do about that group.
Right. I like what you're saying. I really like the feeling of I work at a local level as well. And I like it, even though there's bureaucracy at a local level. It's not like climbing Mount Everest, right? It's a little bit more attainable to get down at a local level. So I really like what you're saying about the local level of getting involved. Of course, I love what you're saying about pick an issue. That's my favorite statement as well. It doesn't have to be what we're talking about. It can be, you want to preserve your bank account or to have a future retirement, or like you said, Social Security or Medicare, or it could be something completely different. Doesn't even really matter, just as long as you get behind an issue, because they all seem to be sort of skewed across the board. And I love what you said about it makes you feel better, and that's why I do what I do, because I can't, and I think it's why you've always done what you do, because once you know something, you can't sit on the sidelines. I think that's what causes death in the end for us, because it hardens us and it puts us in denial, and taking the action to actually try to get something done. Yes, it can be frustrating to make changes occur, but at the same time, you've got a place to vent the emotion of, and then get a little empowerment, at the same time, which I think is better than just sitting around and then dying of stress at a young age.
If our ancestors here in the United States, women, for example, had said, well, we don't, we're not going to fight for the right to vote. In my mother's time, when my mother was born, women didn't have the right to vote. Imagine if women hadn't picketed and gone to jail and had all kinds of things happen and fought for years. Imagine women wouldn't have the right to vote in this country. And it wasn't easy. Men didn't want us to have the right to vote and own property. There were all kinds of laws. So to say that we're going to do nothing means that we don't empower ourselves.
Mm-hmm. It truly does go back to that, doesn't it? It really goes back to, and that's what I see. I see a lot of people have given up their power and then become victims of the circumstance around them, and it doesn't need to be that way. There was a woman who called me. She was very angry, Rosalind, and she was talking about just the whole gamut that we're talking about. And she said, how dare they say that this is our fault, that it's, that we handed over the wheel of the vehicle to the government and just sort of let them drive it wherever they wanted to. How dare they say this? How dare they? We've been victimized by all of this. They've done things in the middle of the night in Senate meetings that nobody knew about, and passed this and passed that, and lobbyists, and it's criminal. And I do agree with a lot of that. At the same time, I agree with what you're saying more. That's why I do what I do, and that's why you do what you do. And listeners need to realize this. We don't do it because we just like to take all of our energy and focus it on educating people for free. I mean, we're doing it because it is the thing to do. And you made a very good point. If women, I like that. I like that you used an example with women. But if women didn't get out there and fight for the right to vote, we wouldn't have the right to vote today. I mean, it's not like they're just going to say, I think that we should give women the right to vote.
That wasn't going to happen.
we do have to fight for the things that we want. Yes, it's dark subject matters these days. It's alarming to see what they're doing to our marine life. It's alarming all under the umbrella of war. I mean, what's new?
But look what happened. I'll use another example. Look what happened in Mendocino County, where I live in Northern California. Not me, but although I was present, but I wasn't actively engaged, only because I was doing other things at the time. But a group of people got together, a small group, and they decided to ban genetically modified organisms to be brought into Mendocino County. And they put it on the county. It was a county initiative. It was on the ballot. And Monsanto and group all outspent us about 80-1 or something. I don't know. It was enormous. But the people of Mendocino County, educated, voted the only GMO ban in the entire United States. As far as I know, I still think it's the only one. But we took that action.
That is so promising. I want to talk more about this when we come back to the break on how exactly you guys did that. That is amazing. We're on the air with Rosalind Peterson. I'm Roxy Lopez with The Truth Denied. Hang in there. Just a short break. We'll be right back. Amazing information you have for us, Rosalind, every time. Now, you were just mentioning that you, Mendocino County, banned GMOs, and if I'm correct, you also years ago banned fluoride in the water as well, didn't you?
Yes, here in our water district, yes, we did. The board had voted without the people knowing that they were going to put in fluoride, so we had an uprising, and they had to reverse their decision practically less than a month after they made the decision. And the people here said no fluoride in the water. And so there's no fluoride in our water because we said no.
See, this is how you do it, people. And now you have you've officially banned GMOs. And if anybody knows about Mendocino, you do have farmland out there, correct?
Yes, we have agriculture here. We have a cross-section of Pacific Ocean coastline, a large amount of the Mendocino County borders the Pacific Ocean, and then we go inland. We have the Mendocino Forest. We have all kinds of lakes here. So we have a wide variety of different things in our county because we go over a couple of mountain ranges. So it's a pretty large county. But you had asked me about GMOs, and one of the things I wanted to say is that there was a dedicated small group of people that worked in 2003 and 2004 to not only learn everything they could about GMOs, but also to educate the public and get the signatures needed to put this on the ballot. And despite opposition, they got it passed, and it stands today. And we're enormously proud of the fact that this small group of people were so dedicated and ferreted out the truth about GMOs and educated the public, and the people here voted overwhelmingly, not by a small margin, but voted overwhelmingly to ban GMOs. And I can't tell you how much activism at the local level could mean if people were motivated to use facts and figures, talk about what's true, and to educate other people, and to get issues on the ballot, and to elect people who stand for what you believe. If you're not willing to do that, you become a whine and complainer.
You become part of the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's excellent what you're saying. And you know, for instance, here right now, you know, I've got to print up some flyers because they're going to be deploying the smart meters in about 2 weeks. So now I've got to educate the public around me on the smart meters. Do you have something about smart meters on your website?
I sure do. I have a whole section on smart meters on my website. If you go to categories and click on go down to PG&E smart meters, you'll find all kinds of information on smart meters. And in California, we took it before the Public Utilities Commission, and we are now allowed in California to opt out of having a smart meter on our house. And we're still going to fight a small charge for that, but we have the right, and Californians have the right not to do that. And PG&E was going to say it was mandatory, and we saved ourselves and our family members and a lot from smart meters. So it can be done. I think for Maine banned them. Vermont is going to ban them with no charges for not having one. It just came through the wires a couple of 2 or 3 days ago, I think.
Awesome. That's what I'm starting here, and the same kind of story here. I opted out. All you have to do is make a phone call, and then it's got to clear the Arizona commissioner after they're done deploying, and then they figure out how much they're going to charge. I guess they have to sort of pass something. So I like that. What I'm hearing, you're not getting charged to not have a smart meter in Mendocino. Well,
we're going to pay a small amount. Probably $10 each month, and we don't think that's fair. But however, I'd rather pay $10 a month than have a smart meter on my house.
I'm with you.
Because of the health effects of having them on our houses, and also because I know that they can be hacked easily. And did you know that the meter readers who read those meters, those smart meters right now, when they first put them in or install them, can have, because they get closer to 9 feet, there's a SAGE report which shows that they can have problems with their testes and eyesight from that type of exposure. So there's all kinds of different things and a lot of fires. They start fires. Also, they can run too fast and charge you for electricity use. If they get over 80 degrees, 85 degrees, or they sit in the sun, they can work faster than normal and overcharge you.
I do know about that. And, Arizona gets over 80 degrees at least 6 months of the year. So that's going to be really interesting to see, the bills. I have read reports where people, their residents' bills were doubled. And then they freaked out and went to. Now you said something about you went to the Public Utilities hearing. Is that what you said?
Well, in California we have a Public Utility Commission. I don't know if they do have one in Arizona, but it's where public complaints about public utilities can be taken. So we, a group of people, brought the issue before the Public Utilities Commission to object. And so the Public Utilities Commission was engaged for over a year, on this issue. And they held hearings and meetings, and people protested. And so we finally got PG&E to have to back down and to allow people to opt out of having them on their homes. So that's where we stand at this particular point. But I think there's going to be more hearings on unnecessary charges, so that may come down the way shortly here again.
Yes, and I also know that they're also going to be doing with the gas meters and the water meters. So this is ongoing. I think the public needs to know and needs to understand that we just need to continue putting our voice out there into the face of government, if you will, to let them know that we object to whatever we object to, and why, and a story, and you're a good example in Mendocino County of what it's like to object. People here actually thought they couldn't even opt out, and somebody talked to me, that from California. And about PG&E, and she said, she's a big smart meter activist, and she said her name was Deborah Tavares, and she said,
I know Deborah.
Okay, she's coming on the show on Friday.
Oh,
and,
wonderful!
Isn't she? She's just fabulous, and she was saying, call them right away and ask them when they're deploying. And I said, deploying? What the hell are you talking about, deploying? And she said, yeah, they call it deploying. And I thought, that's a military term. And of course, I called APS out here. It's APS. And the first thing the woman said, yes, we'll be deploying in the next 2 weeks. And I thought, why are they using this term? It's such a strange term, deploying.
Yeah, well, it's military because they want us to believe that we have to do it.
I know, and it's just crazy. But I did opt out, and they were very nice about it, and no problem. And then they sent me a nice letter to let me know that there's nothing wrong with smart meters at all. They're fine. They're just fine. So if you change your mind, just give us a call. And meantime, I'm having to explain this to neighbors, anyone within 1,000 feet of me, because now, I'm going to get everyone around me to participate in this. And, and I'm doing the explaining and giving out the information and basically, a lot of my neighbors around here, and this is the good thing, when you start doing a lot of activism and you turn out to be right, and you probably have this experience in Mendocino, Rosalind, after a while you just tell people say no and they just do it. You know what I mean? And you give them a piece of tape, put it on here and on the meter to say do not, I opted out. And after a while people do just start doing what you asked them to do, neighbors and things, because they know that eventually, God, Roxy, she knows her stuff, so we'll just do it. So hopefully I can get my goal is to get 700 homes to opt out, and we'll see what happens.
This would be wonderful.
Yeah, I'll let you know what happens, but I'm working on it in all my spare time.
If I can be of any help to you or information about a lawsuit that there is a lawsuit where the anti-smart meter group won. So there is a prevailing lawsuit now. So there's other issues where this has come before the courts in other states. So if you need any information, give me a call.
I will definitely do that because I want to know the whole gamut of what's been happening. And it sounds like California, we don't have any of this sort of protesting going on here. So it sounds like Arizona kind of watched what happened to California. I know there's protesting in Hawaii, but I think they watched, what happened in California. And so the major utility, the electric companies for now are just sort of, giving you this option to opt out for now. I mean, they haven't really cleared everything with the Arizona commissioner yet. And they told me that, as far as what's going to happen in the future. So, yes, there are pending everything.
You may want to call the commission or check their website and find out what the status is.
Okay.
And also if you can file something with them, because people should be able to file that they don't want smart meters and to ask to be put on the list for hearings and things like that.
Good idea, and I will do that. And then back to our original subject matter, which hurt my heart so much. Back to the calls to action that you have going right now, which is extensive. And I'm going to advertise. I'm going to do an article and have all of this information, Rosalind, that you sent to me, so that others can at least look through it. It's very involved, but we have a lot of very educated people that listen to the shows and follow our work. And by the way, you have a lot of fans, Rosalind. We have a list of questions here for you.
Oh, good. I'll be happy to answer them.
I know. I told them that you always are happy to answer for this. But I do want to know, this show is flying by. We've got 20 minutes and one more commercial break. The U.S. Navy's 12 5-year warfare testing program, your call to action. We're going to advertise this, and what is the most effective thing? Obviously, we're going to have people read through this. What can they do? It's all listed here. And you have some things on your website that if people want to download, correct, regarding this issue to mail into their congressional leaders, etc.?
Yes, I have the letter I sent to you. Mm-hmm. And also there's public comment for 2 ranges. The large Atlantic and Gulf of Mexico range that they want to implement, and the final public comment period is July 10th, 2012. And then there's the big Pacific range expansion, and that public comment period ends July 10th, 2012. So in those 2 ranges, what's important to know is that we need to protect our marine mammals. And we also need to say that if we don't protect them, we'll lose them, and that the Navy should not have the right to practice everywhere. There's a toll-free number to call your elected officials, any of them, in Washington, D.C., and that number is 1-866-22-00044, and that's 1-866-22-00044.
I saw it somewhere on the document that you sent to me a little while ago, and now I can't find that phone number, but I'll find it again.
It's at the end. It's just above my signature.
Is it the end? Okay, hold on. Oh, your signature. Hold on a second. Okay, because I'll definitely advertise that number, and then you do have the list of ranges and everything. Cherry Point Naval Surface Warfare Center, Panama City Division, and the whole list is here.
There's a U.S. Navy map on my website that they can visit,
right,
where they can see all of the ranges and all of the island areas where they're practicing. And there are meetings to be held. There's 4 meetings to be held in Hawaii. There's a meeting in Southern California. Mm-hmm. And then there's also some meetings that the Navy's going to hold on the East Coast, but not many. And I think that people need to know exactly what's going to happen to these marine mammals and the staggering number of them. 32 species of marine mammals are going to be impacted, 11.7 million marine mammals. And that doesn't include the fish, that doesn't include other species or habitats. And so we need U.S. congressional hearings. We need to get our elected officials to finally say, as a whole, no, this is not good. We need to preserve our oceans, and that there needs to be a way to preserve our national marine sanctuaries and our biologically sensitive areas. So these are critical, and if anyone wants to call me about this issue, my telephone number is 707-485-7520. That's 707-485-7520. I'll be happy to send you information and answer your questions.
Excellent. Everybody hang in there. We're going to take a short commercial break, and then we're going to spend the last part of the show answering some questions from all of you. This is The Truth Tonight Talk Radio. I'm Roxy Lopez, and our guest is Rosalind Peterson. We'll be right back. So, Rosalind, I have some questions for you. I'm going to pick out the ones that aren't redundant, but some people ask some questions, and we'll just see what you have to say about that. How's that, Rosalind?
That sounds fine.
Okay, cool. Now, Sean Stinson from Texas asks, from New York, sorry. He wants to know, and several other people asked the same question after him. So they want to know why the rain is so slimy, almost greasy.
Well, we're conducting atmospheric tests, and there's rocket programs, there's Navy programs, Air Force programs, there's weather modification programs. I'm not sure exactly what the content of your rain is that would cause it to do that, but I would take water samples and visit a water testing lab in your area and ask them to test do water quality tests that they would do for a normal drinking water district. It's possible you could find out what's in the water and find out why it has that consistency.
Thank you. And we'll I'm sure he heard that, and we'll let him know that as well. Sally Parker in the UK, she says that they are getting sprayed more than ever, and meaning geoengineering chemtrails. And she said they've had the driest winter on record this year, the warmest weather for March on record, and the coldest May. What gives?
A lot of countries are modifying the weather. If she wants to go to the weather modification section of my website, she can get copies of the countries that are doing weather modification programs, and also persistent jet contrails, according to Stanford studies and also NASA studies, do change the weather, local weather patterns, and the climate as well. And they can have a tremendous impact on the type of weather they're getting there.
Okay, and that's a good answer. A resident from Virginia has noticed that birds have been attacking one another, and other reports that have been coming in as well that kind of coincide with this gentleman in Virginia. People have noticed that pet owners are witnessing their animals aggressing each other, outdoor animals, aggressing another, and reports. Many of the reports are the owners are saying that this is really unusual behavior for their pets. Anything that you might be able to?
With the Navy and the Air Force conducting electromagnetic weapon system testing, that can have an effect, we do believe, on some pets. And also the smart meters, there's all kinds of things now going on in the environment which can be an irritation source. And people talk about this sometimes, even their own emotions. They tend to be run to more emotional than normal. And so people have talked about that quite extensively. And I think that some of these testing that they're doing can have certain effects on certain types of pets and also people.
Wow, I do agree. Why doesn't Rosalind start a lawsuit against the government?
I've had the privilege of being engaged in a lawsuit against the state of California several years ago. And one, you have to put up a bond of $10,000 to get into court. Even if you have a pro bono lawyer, you've got court costs, you've got tremendous amount of expenses. And also, if you lose your lawsuit, as an individual myself, if I were to lose the lawsuit, I'd have to pay the court costs and attorney's fees and all the other fees for the other side. As a private individual, it would be almost impossible to recover from suing the government if I lost. And so, therefore, I think we have to find other avenues to work through the process other than a lawsuit.
I have a lot of reasons to agree with you on that one, too. But, there are those who are. I'm a plaintiff on a lawsuit out of Shasta, so we'll see what happens there. Hopefully I won't get stuck with a big bill, right?
If you sign on the dotted line, you could be liable for legal costs.
Mm-hmm.
And whoever can pay could, in other words, if you have assets, they'll go after the people with assets to pay the bills.
Absolutely. Yes. I'm aware of it.
There's an upside and a downside to some things.
Yes, agreed. Agreed. If you don't have anything to lose, you could put your name on the dotted line because they probably won't come after you for the money at the end of the day if you do lose. But whatever. It's. I'm on both sides of the fence with it. I don't know who asked this question, but it came in on Twitter. Is weather mod a form of population reduction?
No, it's a form of have and have-nots. Weather modification programs in the United States, for example, anyone can initiate them. Private corporations, ski resorts, cities, counties, states, Pacific Gas and Electric modifies the weather here in California. And so anyone can do it. There's no restrictions. I could hire a weather modification company right now to enhance snow or rainfall in any county or anywhere I wished. The problem being that now that they've made the Chicago Mercantile Exchange a betting parlor for weather modification programs, snow or rainfall totals, there's a lot of betting that can be done on the NOAA listing of weather modification programs in the United States. You can make a fortune betting on the weather. But it also leads to where people will modify the weather so that they can make a killing in the stock market. So it has its drawbacks, but usually it's to benefit one person or one group or one corporation over another, and they have the haves and the have-nots. So it doesn't benefit everyone and can be for private gain.
Absolutely. And I would have to say I subscribe to that as well. And last but least, I think I'll ask this question because it'll close the show really well. We only have a couple of more minutes, Rosalind. Do you agree that this show went by pretty fast?
Yes, it did.
Gosh, we never run out of stuff to talk about. I wish you lived nearer to me. We could sit around and talk about some more of it and cook up some calls to actions together.
Yes, that would be great.
That would be fun, wouldn't it? Oh,
yes,
my God.
It would.
Okay, so, all right, last question, Andy Farley. What avenues can ordinary citizens take to make the government aware of what is going on and that citizens want it stopped? And I think we pretty much covered how to do that, Rosalind, didn't we?
Yes, we did. And I think that what happens is that I've put a lot of documentation on my website, the letter, I've got links, different things, and we can take action. We have the ability to write letters to the editor, sign petitions. We have the ability to do all kinds of things. And if enough people started to know about what was happening and that we were going to lose the majority of our marine mammals, I think people would rise up and say no. And our elected officials, it's an election year, go after them. You're not going to vote for them unless they say no to some of this that's going on and hold congressional hearings.
I completely agree, and you give us hope, and I'm so glad that we had you on the show today, because even for myself, I've been, I do what you do, this just try to get as much information and what can we do in local levels and this and then state level, city level, county levels, and you just give me so much hope. I love your stories, and I'm sure the audience agrees that, Mendocino County, hip, hip, hooray, you ban GMOs, you ban fluoride in the water, and you have gone routes that seem to bring success to Mendocino County. So it's one of many ways to stop the craziness. And of course, your website is www.agricultureworlddefensecoalition.com. Of course, I'll have that in the video today that we will make and release later on tonight, and we'll have all the information put out to the public and everything that you did send us. And I just really enjoyed you today. Thanks so much for coming on the show, Rosalind. You're fun to be around.
Well, thank you. I think you have to keep your sense of humor, and I think you have to know that when you take action and say, when these elected officials come to visit and want your vote, it's not for sale. What are you going to do about this issue? We want to know. We're not voting for you unless you start to act and protect our marine mammals or whatever it is, stop smart meters, whatever it is.
Absolutely. It's amazing. And we just have to keep saying no, we really do.
Yes.
Thank you so much again. And this was The Truth Denied Talk Radio. We're on Mondays and Fridays now from 7 to 9 Central Time. It was so good to have all of you. Thanks again.
No rules, no rules, no taboo topics, no taboo topics, no fear of doom, no fear of doom. We are American Freedom Radio, American Freedom Radio.
The American Freedom Radio Network proudly presents, live from Phoenix, Arizona, The Truth Denied Talk Radio with host Roxy Lopez. Join us here every Friday from 7 to 9 Central for topics you won't hear on mainstream news, such as chemtrails, GMOs, Morgellons disease, and much more. Humanity is 7 billion strong. We are the majority. If you would like to speak to the host, the call-in number is 218-339-8525. And now, live from the Valley of the Sun, your host, Roxy Lopez.
And welcome. It looks like we might have to change that introduction, huh? Now that we are on Mondays. Today is our first Monday show. And I'm really glad we have someone who's returning to the show. She's been on the show a couple of times, majorly respected in the environmental activism field. Her name, of course, is Rosalind Peterson. And during the week when the advertisements were up last week, we did see quite a few people who are just very interested and who also have questions for Rosalind as well. Before I bring Rosalind Peterson on to the show, live, of course, here in Phoenix, Arizona. I do have an announcement. I just received this, and I thought that because I'm getting so much email, our organization's getting so many emails regarding animals, I wanted to let you know, and we will have an article on this probably by the end of the night to direct you to other websites to help you out. But I did receive a Pet 360 safety meter that I am subscribed to, and they just sent out a voluntary recall on pet food. So in case you're not signed up with something like that, we'll do an article so that we can help you along. Anyway, some of the food that's been recalled for both dogs and cats and hamsters and rats are 4Health, Apex, Canaday, Chicken Soup for Pet Lover's Soul, Country Value, Diamond Naturals, Kirkland Signature, of course, you know that's the Costco brand, Natural Balance, which is supposed to be a really good brand, Premium Edge, Professional, Purina Vet Feline, Solid Gold, and the list goes on and on. Wellness, which is another great brand. So if any of you are having any issues with your pets right now, it's salmonella poisoning that they're going through. That's why all of these foods were recalled. And we will write up the article about that later on tonight. And Associated Press, May 11th, 2012, which was only a couple of days ago, revealed that new Navy study says use of sonar explosives may hurt more marine mammals than once thought. And, of course, Honolulu, my hometown, also the U.S. Navy may hurt more dolphins and whales by using sonar explosives in Hawaii and California under a more thorough analysis that reflects new research and covers naval activities in a wider area than previously studied. Can you just tell us when this came to your attention? And we will definitely get into your call to action on this very important issue. It sounds like from the first paragraph of this that what's being quoted here that I just read, it sounds like that these studies are, at the very least, the activities are in wider spread regions than you thought, for one, and harming more marine mammals than once thought. Is that a correct statement?
That is a correct statement. For your audience, if you want to follow along, and you can go online, there's on the agriculturedefensecoalition.org, right under the photographs of the cows, there's the U.S. Navy section, or you can go onto the category section and find several sections which are going to be updated in a couple of days with every piece of information I know about these U.S. Navy warfare testing programs. Now, the map on my website, there's a United States map. It's a Navy map. And it shows the entire United States coastal boundary. On this boundary, since 2008, a whole series of ranges are drawn in. And of all these ranges that are located from the entire coastal region all the way on the west coast of the United States, that means Washington, Oregon, and California, all the way down past Southern California, there's a series of warfare testing ranges that are in complete operation, testing sonar, bomb blast, missile exercises, new weapon systems, drone surveillance, and weapon testing. And what is shocking is that they are also conducting these programs and experiments in the Gulf of Mexico and along the entire Atlantic seaboard from Maine all the way to Florida, and then Florida all the way to Texas. Included are also islands in the Pacific Ocean. For example, the Hawaiian Islands, the Marianas Islands, near Guam, all these ranges, including now new ones in the Gulf of Alaska, are either in operation. There's 12 in operation right now, and there are more planned, huge ranges.
I must say that we'll provide you some information of what the signs are, and mainly the venison has been recalled, and most of you know that my cat was diagnosed with IBD 5 months ago, and the only diet they will allow my cat to have is venison. So I think this is really interesting. So after the show, I'm going to have to make an emergency call to our specialists and find out why my kitty hasn't been wanting to eat his venison for the last few days. I do prescribe to that brand, Natural Balance. So I'll let you know further what happens. Now, with that in mind, please, I don't know anything more about this, so I will write up the article after the show. We will open up the caller lines in the second hour. We have Rosalind Peterson all to ourselves for 2 whole hours. This is going to be a fantastic show. She has new information to bring to the table. At the top of the second hour, you may call in 218-339-8525. We're glad to take your calls. Rosalind is the California president and co-founder of the Agricultural Defense Coalition. It's also known as the ADC, which was formed in 2006 to protect agriculture from a wide variety of experimental weather and atmospheric testing programs. So her website, by the way, if you want to follow along, is agriculturedefensecoalition.org. And as I have said before on the show, this is an extensive website, very organized. If you want to see the categories on the front page or the home page, whatever you want to call it, just click categories right under those photos at the top, and you will see the plethora of categories for your interests. This newest or latest paper that Rosalind has written up, I'll give you a little piece of it, the U.S. Navy's 5-year warfare testing program and the increasing and ongoing threat to the Gulf of Mexico, Atlantic, and Pacific Oceans. And she's got a call to action to help save our marine mammals and their ocean habitat. So I'm going to let Rosalind explain this call to action, give us some background on it, and let us know what is happening with this particular call to action that she has going at her organization. And it's good to have you back. Welcome to the show, Rosalind.
Well, thank you. It's an honor and a privilege to be here with you today.
Well, thanks. Likewise. And I'm concerned. Sorry I had to, make that announcement and keep you holding there. No disrespect. But I just got it in right before the show, and I just had to make that announcement for pet lovers so they can get started on doing some research on pet food recall. I find it really interesting how many foods are infected with salmonella. It's making me crazy. But anyway, a lot of things make me crazy, and you know that, right, Rosalind?
Well, there's a lot of areas of concern, that's for sure.
I know, exactly. So thank you for sending the information about this program. I know that we touched on this the last time you were on the show. I think that was a couple of months ago. In your report, you say the Washington Post. That just floors me. It really does. How aggravating. And why would they even, in my opinion, why would they even make such a statement? Because it just sounds ridiculous. It sounds like you said, 17th century, especially that's why we have radar today. And as you know, I think you know this, my husband's a deep sea fisherman, captain, and radar is what they use for just about anything, and I don't understand why they would even make a statement as so ridiculous as this.
Well, that's what my congressman, U.S. Congressman Thompson, thinks as well, that the Navy's mitigation measures, one, are effective only 9% of the time, but two, I believe that because Navy and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration are promoting this technique of sightings from the mast of a ship, essentially. Mm-hmm. That they don't really want to find any marine mammals. So they don't want to see them. In other words, they're setting up, because you wouldn't see marine mammals at night.
No.
They do exercises at night. You're not going to see marine mammals most of the time. If you have any type of fog or weather events or rain or whatever else is happening, and you're not going to see the smallest of the marine mammals anyway, because whitecaps, fog, gray weather can all obscure visual sightings from the mast of a ship.
Well, and in light of what you said about the 9% of the time, I think that's a high percentage myself. It's
I do too.
Right? It's a needle in a haystack.
Yes.
You know?
So, when you look at the maps, the scope of the warfare testing is so tremendous that I find myself even stunned by the level of testing and the amount, because most of these warfare ranges have redundant testing, redundant new weapon systems testing. In other words, the 2,000-pound bombs are the same in the Atlantic and the Gulf of Mexico and in the Pacific, Hellfire missiles, and there's hundreds each year that will be shot off in just one range, much less all the ranges total. So you're talking about the Navy going to war on our oceans and our marine mammals without any thought of protecting them, without any thought of preserving. National marine sanctuaries, for example, are not protected in most ranges. The one in Northern California, Oregon, and Washington, the national marine sanctuaries, the marine reserves, for just one example, the biologically sensitive areas, breeding habitats, feeding habitats are all being bombed, sonarized. Toxic chemicals are being dumped in the ocean, debris, unexploded ordnance. I can't tell you how much is going into these oceans in all of their exercises with nothing being protected. The U.S. Navy...
Rosalind, hold that thought. We're going to go into a commercial break, and we'll be right back, and let's continue.
Going to be planned for the Pacific and the Atlantic, and the public comment started on May 11th and will continue through July 10th, 2012. And people can make public comments. They can write to their elected officials. There's lots to do. But here's what's going on. According to Senator Dianne Feinstein and 7 other senators, the Navy plans to increase the number of its exercises or expand the areas in which they may occur, and virtually every coastal state will be affected. Some exercises may occur in the nation's most biologically sensitive marine habitats, including national marine sanctuaries and breeding habitats. In all, the Navy anticipates more than 2.3 million takes, significant disruptions in marine mammal foraging, breeding, and other essential behaviors per year, or 11.7 million takes over the course of a 5-year permit. This letter was written on June 19, 2009. Since that time, more military warfare testing ranges have been approved, and the takes, which is defined as, under the Marine Mammal Protection Act, harass, hunt, capture, kill, or collect, or attempt to harass, hunt, capture, kill, or collect. And it's defined under the Endangered Species Act as to harass, harm, pursue, hunt, shoot, wound, kill, trap, capture, or collect, or attempt to engage in any such conduct. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration has been approving the taking of marine mammals like someone would take pancakes off a grill. They've been rubber stamping them. In most cases, the mitigation measures to protect marine mammals are effective only 9% of the time, according to their own studies. And also, the 9% of the time for their mitigation measures means that they are being protected with a 17th century method of putting somebody on the mast of a ship, essentially, and using binoculars to see if they can see any marine mammals. If they do, we are to believe that they will stop multi-million-dollar exercises, missile exercises, sonar use, bomb blasts, until the marine mammals are gone. there's only one problem. The seas in the Pacific, for example, are usually gray. Under cloudy skies, there can be fog, there can be white caps, and the odds of someone standing in a mast of a ship and seeing a marine mammal is almost impossible, like a sea turtle. So their techniques are straight out of the 17th century, when sailing ships used to look out at sea and look for other ships nearby, or in war they used to look for enemy ships. So this technique is the technique that the Navy, with all of its technological know-how, is using to protect marine mammals.